Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Uh, it's raining outside.
Yep. Yeah.
Careful.
Returning to pandemic mood.
Yeah, I guess so.
Ah,
It's funny because I looked at the last time I did this class and this was it. It's just like this,
wow.
which was fine actually. I'd rather see you guys in person, but what's this thing at the bottom? There's like, oh, that's Cam. Okay. So we'll wait. I haven't met some of the people in this class, so I don't know if they're going to show up or not. Oh, there's Diego. And there's one more person. Gabe, do you know I think her name was Kay Chu? Fei
Hey,
Chu.
Shu is
Fei
in
Chu.
composition. Yes, I know him. He's with
Okay,
Dr.
yeah.
Yeah, Schindelman.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
we
I
have.
remember seeing his piece. That's right. Yeah, cello player. Yeah, cool. Oh, he's here. Okay. Yeah. Fei Chu. There we go. Well, hi, Fei. Hi, everybody else. Um, so we're meeting online. It's a little unexpected for me, so we'll make it through. Um, no problem that you don't have a mic yet. You can just listen. It'll be fine. Um, so the course is on Folio to an extent. We're going to meet in person, obviously, and do it like a normal class, but all the material is on Folio. So for an event like this, we're well prepared. So you can find all the things you need on Folio. And in fact, for each class and each week, like the other classes I've done, um, you should look at Folio for the checklist to see what it is you're supposed to do for that day and what it is you're supposed to do for that week. Try to keep it really organized so it's clear what you're supposed to do. On Folio, there's a syllabus for this class. The syllabus says what we're going to do and how the grades break down and all of that. But it's not that interesting to talk about. So I think what I'll do is I'll let you view that on your own. And if you have any questions about it, you can just let me know. The final exam time is something that we do need to discuss because it will not be the time that is officially scheduled for this class. So the time that is officially scheduled for this class is a Tuesday from 10 to 12. And the time we will actually have the exam is on a Thursday from 10 to 12. Because like every semester, I have to do percussion juries during that time, Tuesday, 10 to 12. And so we move it 2 days later, 10 to 12. Okay, so that's basically the syllabus. I talk about all the things we'll do. We're going to look at how sound is designed and processed in very interesting and flexible ways. Um, Largely using synthesis at first, but quickly moving into sound processing and transformation, which in itself becomes its own form of synthesis in a way. So we'll look at additive synthesis and FM synthesis and granular synthesis, spectral transformation, spatialization, uh, playing back sounds backwards and slowed down and all those sort of things. And how we integrate that into music using algorithmic composition and specifically the power of a programming language. So this course does focus on the SuperCollider audio programming language, which is very scary for many people, but don't be afraid. Because all the time I teach this to people who have no idea how to program anything at all. And that's the expectation, is that you do not know how to do that you have no clue of how to do that. And so that's how we will begin. We will begin uh, with the assumption that you have no idea. So if you do have an idea, you'll be a little ahead of the game. And if you do not have an idea, you will be right on target. Um, the reason we're using SuperCollider 3 is because it is very flexible and it is free. and it will give you skills that transfer to other things. And it is a common tool used in the music world for synthesis, sound design, and processing. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen, and we will look at the slides for today, I hope. It has been a while since I have done. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to share sound. I remember this. Share. So here's some slides, and I'm going to view them as a slideshow somehow. Nope. I don't know how to do a slideshow. How do you present the slideshow?
It's not that big button that says slideshow.
Yes. Okay, there we go. Right. So we did the syllabus and class business. We meet Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9:30 to 10:45. And we're on to the introduction to SuperCollider, which will form a large part of this course, but not the entirety of it. I'm a little opposed to teaching tools. I like to teach topics, but we will definitely learn the tool. So SuperCollider is a programming language that stems from a long history of such languages. So sometime, and I'll get to this a little later, but sometime in the 1950s, we decided to use computers to make sound and music, which was a strange thing to do at the time, but now it seems quite obvious that that's what you would do. SuperCollider is a text-based programming language. So you're able to type in text into the computer. And by doing that, you're able to make sounds, which is incredible. Why use this particular program and not any of the other ones? Well, there are other types of programs. We could have used Reactor, or we could have used any number of VSTs, or we could use a number of different things. Why did I choose this one? And one of the reasons I chose this one is because SuperCollider is capable of doing things that many other things are not. It's very wide open about what you can do and doesn't make any assumptions about what you might choose to do. We'll look at the chat. Great. So for instance, when you open a program like Massive, it's got a certain number of oscillators and filters, and it assumes that you're going to use them in a certain way. It assumes that you have a specific goal. When you open a program like Pro Tools, it assumes some things. It kind of tries to make it easy for you to do recording and mixing in a traditional way, because that's the assumption, is that that's what you're going to do, which is great if that's what you're going to do. But if you're trying to do something else, like make an infinitely long piece, or if you're trying to do a piece where there's live processing of an instrument in electronics, and you need that to change on the fly with a foot pedal, then that is not a great choice, because you're going to have to work very hard to make a program like Pro Tools do something like that. So SuperCollider is the most flexible of the languages as far as being able to do anything you want to do, with the exception of maybe one other language called Chuck, but I won't go there. So I'm going to pull up my notes. I was unable to print them. It was exciting. And I'll read right here. I hope you guys can still see the slides. With SuperCollider, one can create many things, very long or infinitely long pieces, infinite variations of structure or surface detail, algorithmic mass production of synthesis voices, sonification of empirical data or mathematical formulas, to name a few. It has also been used as a vehicle for live coding and network performance. The main idea of SuperCollider is to algorithmically compose objects to create sound-generating processes. And that is a quote from the author of SuperCollider, James McCartney. And I've met James McCartney. He wrote SuperCollider when he was living in Austin, Texas. It actually started off as a Max object called Pyrite. And then it moved out of that and he created SuperCollider 1, which one of my advisors used to use. Actually, a couple of my advisors from my PhD committee used to use. I came into SuperCollider at SuperCollider 2. It cost me $50. So I supplemented James McCartney's meager living in Austin, Texas with my $50 to buy SuperCollider 2. And then shortly after I paid $50, he got a real job working for Apple. And then he released SuperCollider 3 as an open source and free tool. But I was happy to have given my $50 to get a jump start on SuperCollider 2. Okay. So my own personal take on this, I have used this program extensively. And like I said, since SuperCollider 2, so I've been using it for about 22 years, I guess, about 22 years. For sound design and for improvisation, I use it. And I will rarely compose an entire piece in SuperCollider itself. So there's that. Although I have written entire pieces in SuperCollider, and I know people that write entire pieces in SuperCollider. But the way I use it, I'll make small sound generating devices. I have a certain need for a certain sound or a certain idea, or I have a need for its structure. And I'll make those. And sometimes I make tools that have a graphical user interface so I can make the sounds I want. And if I'm writing an electronic piece, most of the time I'll use SuperCollider to generate those sounds, and then I'll stick them in something that's better for me to organize sound graphically, like a DAW, like Pro Tools or Reaper or Logic or Ableton. And often I use SuperCollider to create instrument and electronics pieces. So the last piece I wrote for violin and electronics, and the last piece I wrote for clarinet and electronics, both use SuperCollider to do that to good success in my mind. Okay, so that's my personal take on it. I think it's very powerful. And if you can devote yourself to getting over the steep learning curve, it does flatten out a bit, and you can find a very powerful tool that many other people aren't aware of or haven't taken the time to use. And so you set yourself apart. So what you will need to do for this course, I recommend strongly, although if you don't have a computer, that's fine. But it would be better for you if you did have this at home, since it's free and open source and will run on your computer in all likelihood. It would be great for you to download it and have it on your home computer. It is a sort of thing that is like practicing an instrument. So maybe you've taught before, if you've ever taught someone how to play an instrument before, or if you've ever taken instrument lessons, you know that you can't just show up to the lesson and expect to learn the instrument. That in fact, you have to practice outside of the lesson in order to accomplish anything at all. Just going to the lesson doesn't do it. And so it's going to be very similar with this class and with this program, that if you don't actually practice this program and you just show up to class to try to do it, you won't be successful. It needs practice like anything else to be good at it. And you could come to the school, and I do recommend you come to the school, and you can use this on any of the computers we have there. However, we do not have a refrigerator of your own at the school. And so if you want to get up for a snack, it's a lot easier at your house. And I know many of you would like that, or you like the comfort of your couch or to sit in your bathrobe, whatever it is you like to do. So you should download the program on your computer. It is available for Windows, Macintosh, and Linux. I think you can even download this on a Raspberry Pi at this point. It is originally for Macintosh, so Macintosh and Linux tend to have a little bit easier time off the jump from the get-go. But it should absolutely work 100% on Windows. You may have to figure out a little bit about your operating system's audio card to make this work. I am not a Windows user, so I can't help you too much with experiential knowledge, but I have debugged a lot of it for other people. And so if you need help, if you can't get it running, then it will be important that you contact me and we'll get it running on your computer so that you feel comfortable working at home if you need to for days like this. All right, so that's the link. You can do with that what you will. Let me modify this share here. I'm just going to stop the share. And I'm going to share my entire screen here. I did not share sound. Oh. I did share sound. Okay. So here's the entire screen. And SuperCollider 3 consists of 3 parts. Although you only launch one thing. You just launch one thing and all these 3 things open. The 3 things are a text-based software synthesis and algorithmic composition language. And that's called SC Lang, like Lang for language. And you never really see that. You just use it. It also is the thing that houses things you make like sliders and knobs if you choose to make those. The second part of SuperCollider is a synthesis engine. So running separately from the program itself is a small application, and its job is only to make audio. It is a highly optimized thing that somebody worked really hard on. Now, it turns out that if you dig a little deep and you do some reading, you're going to find out that there are actually 2 synthesis engines you could use. You can use the traditional SC synth, or you could use the newer Supernova. I recommend that you just stick with SC synth. The reason that Supernova exists is because SC synth does not make use of multiple cores of your processor. It doesn't do multi-threading. And so it'll always, SC synth will always run on just one core. Supernova is designed in such a way where you can use multiple cores. However, the way to do that is a little more complicated, and the need to do that does not arise very often. I have not run into many issues of needing to use more than one core of my processor to do this. It's very efficient anyway. But when the time comes, that does exist. So now I've planted that seed, and you can do that. As a default and without changing anything, it will work the correct way from the beginning. So you can just totally ignore what I said. The third part of SuperCollider is the integrated development environment, and that is known as an IDE. And you'll hear that term in computer world often. It's just the place you work. That's the program you open and where you type and how you manage the server. It all is in this one integrated place. So SuperCollider works now, as SuperCollider 3 works as a client-server model. So when you make a Google Doc and you type into the Google Doc, you are using a client-server model then, because that Google Doc does not exist on your computer. It exists on a server, and you are the client to that server. And in fact, many clients could talk to the same server. So it's the same here. When you type messages in SuperCollider, it is sent to the synthesis engine, which, like I said, is a program running on your computer that is a server, kind of. So you have to speak to it and send messages to it. That rarely comes into play as something you have to think about, but it is a good thing to know that the language sends messages to the engine about how to make sound, and the engine makes the sound. So the structure of the program ends up relying on that client-server model, and it is something that we will encounter head on. So if you don't understand what I just said, don't worry. You will encounter it head on, and then you'll have to figure it out. There's a client-server model. So let me show you the program itself. So I'll quit the program, I guess, and I'll launch it. So here I'm going to launch SuperCollider, and there's the program, right? It opens up. We've got these different windows that you can move around in various ways. You can undock them. You can move them around. You can get good at that. There's a help browser. There's a post window. You can change how big those things are. And then over here to the left is your blank slate of where you can type text. And down here at the bottom right, it says server. And to the left, it says interpreter. So if you click down here, you can get some options about the server. Or if you go to where it says server in the menu, you can get the same sort of options there. So there's the server portion of what I'm talking about. Here's the language. The language is called the interpreter, and it is a separate program. So notice that you could crash the language or crash the server and not crash the entire program, which is a joy you'll probably experience at some point. So here's all the things you can do, including evaluating the text that you write. So notice that there are some shortcuts here. This is probably the most important one. This is command return, and that's how you evaluate text, or you can evaluate a selection with shift return. They both kind of work the same way. So by holding down command and return at the same time, or shift and return at the same time, is the very first thing we'll do to evaluate code. Equally important, maybe even more so, is how to stop sound from happening. Making sound is great. Stopping sounds can sometimes be even better. And when you stop sound, you press command and period. Now, on a Windows machine, that's probably control period, and control enter. But you'll have to figure that out for yourself if you're on a Windows machine. Okay, so down here you see that the interpreter is active. So my language is running. And over here, the server is white and has 0 percentages and zeros all around it. That generally means it's not running. So I'm going to just do the very first thing here. And I'm going to boot the server, booting the server. So I boot the server, and if you do this at home and all is well, it'll turn green. If all is not well, it'll turn yellow, or it'll give you a nasty message, and you'll say, oh, I will email Dr. Thompson because I don't want to try to fix that. It tells me some things here in my post window about what sort of devices it sees on my computer. I've got too many devices. I've got some external headphones, and I've got the Zoom audio. And here it tells me what it chose. It says, well, it actually chose my microphone as the input device, and it chose the Zoom audio output as my output device. So if I make a sound now, it will go to Zoom, and you will be able to hear it. There's some other information about, what the sample rate is and the buffer size and all this stuff. But what you need to know is that's how you boot the server. Just to give you a demonstration of how this actually works, in a very simple way, I will make a sound for you. So I will make a sound that is a sawtooth wave. It goes through a filter, and then gets panned back and forth in our ears. So maybe it'll be stereo for you, maybe it won't be, I don't know. Depends on how I've set the settings, and I don't remember how I set them. Okay, so my sawtooth will be a saw wave. And we'll have a frequency that's controlled by the mouse, let's say. Don't worry if you have no idea what I'm doing. Mouse Y will control the frequency with my mouse moving up and down on the screen. And the minimum frequency we'll choose is 25. And the maximum will be 80. And we will make that a warp of 1, whatever that means. And then we'll make it not so loud. You're welcome. Okay, so there's my sawtooth oscillator, believe it or not. And then I'm going to filter that with a resonant low pass filter. So that's a filter that will cut out the high frequencies. And the input to that is our sawtooth. The frequency will be determined mouse X. So when I move my mouse from the left to the right, the filter frequency will change. And we will make the minimum value 100 and the maximum value 3000. And we will change the Q to be just 1. So that is how narrow our filter is, or what the resonance of the filter is. Great. So there's our filter. And the last thing we do is we need to pan it. So I'm going to pan it to 2 speakers. The input is the filter. And the position will just go back and forth according to a sine wave. A sine wave is just a sort of curve that goes up and down. And we will make it go back and forth 0.7 times per second. So it'll go back and forth to our left and right ear at some rate. Okay. We'll see if I did it right. There it goes. It's Stockhausen. Okay, hopefully you heard that. Did you hear it? You heard it. Did it pan for you? I'm just curious. It did.
No,
for some of you, maybe not for some of you.
For me.
Yeah, it could be. It's a zoom setting. It panned for me. I promise that it pans. So anyway, you probably saw that. You probably crossed your eyes and you said, "Okay, I have no idea what you just did, but it's great that you made a sound, Dr. Thompson. Congratulations." So that is the program and sort of how it works. But it does much more than that, and we will get to that at some other time. Okay, so SuperCollider 3. If you would like to see more examples of what SuperCollider does and listen to them, you can check out this interesting album that was created via a challenge where you were to upload an entire piece written in SuperCollider using only 140 characters on Twitter. So using 140 characters of text, the goal is, or was, to make a piece, which is a crazy idea and difficult. So I will try to go there. Well, you can get there through the GitHub SuperCollider. Oh, actually, I wanted to just go to SuperCollider. All right, and this is where you could download things. And here is the SC140, the amazing SC140 album. And here is a piece, for instance. This is let's go here. Here's a piece by Thor Magnuson, who does a lot of live coding. I will try to copy and paste that. Can I do it? Well, never mind. Maybe you can copy and paste it. It sounds like this. sort of like a techno dance beat thing. Another piece, let's see, here's one by LF Saw. It looks like this is 140 characters. That's a limitation. We'll give it a listen. I don't know how loud this is. Okay. And let's see. We'll pick one more randomly. How about Julian Rohruber, who's actually a really fascinating musical mind. We'll listen to what he's got here. All right, and in a show-off move, he even put a comment in there for the name of his piece, eclecticity. Really good. He wasted, like 15 characters. Show off. All right, so you can check that out. And in fact, if you're better than me with a mouse, you can copy and paste those things and run them in SuperCollider yourself to listen to the piece yourself. Some other examples here as well on the SuperCollider page where you download the app itself. Okay, some other examples of SC in action that I kind of handpicked here. We won't listen to all of these, but we'll listen to a couple of them just to get inspired about what you can do. Juwon Park does live electronics in Detroit at Wayne State University. Whoops. And he's got this piece called Touch, which I enjoy and is kind of amusing and a fascinating sound piece. So let's take a look and listen at that. All right, so there is the creative genius of Ju-Won Park with the touch piece using SuperCollider and chattering teeth and a Lightning McQueen car. Any thoughts about that?
I think just definitely a lot of interesting ideas of what you can do just with like very simple stuff.
Yeah, I always think about what does it mean to be virtuosic. Um, so to me, Ju-Won Park is a virtuosic computer musician. But what does that mean, given that any of us could do the things he's doing with his hands? There's no extreme talent in being sort of nervous and frenetic and tapping things on a board. But there's something there to know what to do in your mind. So the virtuosity of the mind is interesting. Okay, and Curtis Rhodes, I will let you explore that on your own if you choose. His entire album and DVD, Point Line Cloud, was made using SuperCollider and assembled in a DAW. There is Reno Petraziello. I don't know where he's from, but I do like this work that he did. Wow. So let's take a brief listen to that. But first, Squarespace. All right, cool. Sort of a live coding piece there of a higher grain level than a lot of other live coding pieces. And let's see, we'll pick one more here. More of the art music side is Sam Pluta here. And this one, glossolalia is, I think, some sort of religious vocalization, like words that don't make sense or something like that. So here's a little bit of scat and scatter. Wow, I mean, really super cool. All right, so there's that, and then there's some others on there that I don't want to sit here and be a DJ for you, so I will not do that. Although it's fun. It's fun being a DJ. Maybe I should get a slot on the college radio station and just play the weirdest things possible. Oh, I think I have done away with our slides, so sorry, I have to get back to that. Any comments about what you heard? I'm very sorry
mean,
we're not meeting in person.
it's a, as you say, it's very flexible. I didn't know that you could live process, maybe for example, instruments or with a microphone as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, since we're on show and tell here, I'll show you the last violin piece I did, which I used. It's not that, none of this. I have a very unfortunate name. Let's see. Maybe I should just go to my terrible website and get it from there. Probably get it through here. Here, I'll skip forward here. Wow, great quality. Look at that. So all that kind of stuff, and then make the violin not sound like a violin. All SuperCollider. Yeah, it's pretty fun. Harmonics on string instruments sound great. I'm sure that Faye will agree. All right. I was trying to get back to the slides. And share their slides. All right, so I've given you show and tell, and I wanted to give you a brief history of where this comes from, just so you know where we're springing out of historically. And so SuperCollider descends from a lineage of software programs known as the music-in programs, which I alluded to earlier at the beginning of the class. And those languages came to be in a certain way. So let me, I'll tell you what, I'll just pull up. Online is hard. So it dates back to 1950 at Bell Labs in New Jersey. So Bell Labs is where AT&T kind of sprung from. And in the 1950s, Bell Labs was, sorry, I've lost you guys. Where'd you go? Bell Labs was a place where artists and scientists could work together in a research capacity. So people like John Cage Max Matthews, Laurie Spiegel, Jean-Claude Rousset, many artists, visual artists and otherwise. They would come to Bell Labs where they were doing scientific research. So at some point in our history in the United States, when things were going really well, we had this idea, and companies had this idea that was extremely important for artists to be involved and people in the humanities to be involved in the advances of science. And in fact, Bell Labs put forth a whole department devoted to this idea that artists would work alongside scientists to make advances in telecommunications and things like audio for computers. So in that spirit, that's where Max Matthews was working, and Max Matthews wrote the first computer music program called Music, later to be called Music 1. And what it did was it just used a very low-level language, assembly language in a computer, which is not a way you want to write things if you're a normal person, to make sounds from the computer, which at the time I'm sure seemed like an odd thing to do, but I'm glad he did. And that was in 1957. Music 1 was written in assembly, a low-level language, and is specific, because it's written in assembly, it's specific to only a certain type of computer. Only one computer could really do it, one computer processor. So the idea that you could download a program now and it'll work on all the different Macintosh versions or all the different Windows laptops you might have, whether they have an i3 processor, an i5 processor, an i7 processor, it doesn't matter. That was not something that it was like back then. So Music 1 allowed for one voice at a time, and the voice had to be a triangle wave. So you had one timbre, and you could do one voice at a time. That means no polyphony, no chords, only one voice at a time. The triangle wave had no attack or decay. It was just a boop, boop. And you could specify three things: the pitch, the loudness, and the duration. Here are some quotes about that particular system and its results. Max Matthews said, "It was terrible." John Pierce said, "To me, it sounded awful." So why do I bring that up? Why do I bring up those bad quotes? I bring up those quotes because it's important to remember that forward-looking things often don't offer instant gratification. If they did not make that awful sounding Music 1 with only a triangle wave that just booped one note at a time, that we wouldn't have all the wonderful things we have today. Someone had to start. And that's a good lesson for all of us, that sometimes you have to wait a little bit for something to come to fruition. That's a good lesson. Music 2 was written in 58. So Max Matthews again, and this had 4 voices. You could have a quartet with 4 different waveforms. So Max Matthews was a violin player, and I think took a lot of inspiration from string instruments. The triangle wave is maybe akin to how a string instrument might sound. Music 3 came later, and the big change there is it was the first computer music language to incorporate the concept of modularity. So does anybody know what it means to be modular?
That you can add, like, for example, a filter, an oscillator, like.
Right, you have small individual components that can be linked together. So, it's not a static structure, it's a dynamic structure. So you could have a sine oscillator that runs into a filter that runs into a sine oscillator. You could move around those small components in a network of graphs. And those modular pieces at that point in 1960 were called unit generators. And that's a term that's still used today. So in SuperCollider, you will see that terminology used, that the objects we use to make sound are called unit generators. They generate a unit of sound. So that's a very fundamental turning point in music history. as far as computer music goes, is the development of the unit generator by Max Matthews in 1960. So if you think about music history being taught in 500 years, maybe they'll talk about that as much as we talk about, you know, the development of the piano or something like that. So a unit generator is a software module that emits audio or control signals. So a control signal being something that is a shape, but maybe not something that you hear. So just a shape in electricity, digital electricity. So unit generators are things like oscillators, noise generators, impulse generators, sound playback. They are also things that modify signals like filters, delays, reverberators, spatializers. They are also things that control parameters. So something that might control pitch to make it go up and down, right? Could be an envelope, the mouse input, random number generators. So to remind you of the SuperCollider code that I wrote in class, that was a series of unit generators interconnected. The output of a unit generator can be connected to an input of another unit generator, and that makes a unit generator graph. And that defines the instrument. So instruments in our world from here on out are graphs of unit generators. Like a network of unit generators makes an instrument. There's not really an equivalent with our acoustic world. I mean, I guess there kind of is, but not in the same way. When we play a flute, we don't really think of it as a modular instrument. We think of it as one thing. But in our world, we have to construct our instruments. And so we have to make the reed itself. We have to make the mouthpiece itself. We have to make the body of the instrument. We have to make all of those things. So after Music 3, things diverged a bit. And after that, there's Music 4 and Music 5. And so they become Music N, where N is just some number, because it's like, well, how long are we going to number these things? We're not. We're just going to say Music N. You know, it's a Music N language. It's in the same spirit where we have unit generator graphs that make sounds, and we organize those sounds using the computer, and that would be a Music N language. Most of those languages have something called an orchestra score paradigm. So you have an orchestra of instruments, where an instrument is a graph of unit generators. And then you have a score where those instruments are told what to play. Right? And that score typically looks like start at this time, play this frequency at this volume with these parameters. And that's how you create your score, which in the beginning was very tedious because you're just typing that out, if you can imagine. So the score indicates the instrument name, the start times, durations, parameters of sonic events, and then the orchestra is the UGen graph and the parameters of that graph that can be changed with the score. So in SuperCollider, it has advanced a bit. It takes advantage of modern ideas, right? So if you think about how might I write a score if I don't get to write it in Finale, although you could write it in Finale, you could use that. But how would I write a score if I'm forced to use text? So you might take advantage of the power of computer programming to create an algorithmic manner of calculating the parameters and the complex relationships that might exist between those parameters. So if you think of someone like even Bach and the algorithmic nature of how he writes music and the interconnectedness of the ideas in a fugue, then there you have a good model of how one might, in a sophisticated way, write a score using a computer program. If you could achieve that level, which would be extremely difficult. Bach's very good, if you haven't heard. A long story can now be told of the Music N languages if that wasn't long enough for you. But the salient points are that Music N style languages are now One, processor independent. So now you can run the language on whatever computer you want. Here we have SuperCollider, can even run on different operating systems on any number of computers. It is written not in assembly, but in a higher level language like C++. Don't worry if you don't know what that means. And they are capable now of real-time interactivity. So as we saw in the Ju-on Park piece, for example, we can, rather than write a score ahead of time, simply process sounds in real time, or even generate notes based on what someone's playing in real time, and have the computer automatically interact. Now, what's interesting to think about is the new renaissance of artificial intelligence, which we have yet to really get our heads around, and how that's going to affect that idea. How is that going to affect, for instance, an instrument and electronics piece where artificial intelligence is being defined as the type of pattern prediction where a human doesn't need to be involved anymore? So your computer can become an independent musical partner rather than a partner that just does your bidding or has to do what it's told all the time. So you have to imagine those possibilities coming right around the corner. And in fact, maybe they're already here. Fascinating. Okay, so the basic concepts I want you to take away from all of that, and I'm sorry you had to listen to me talk about historical things for a little while, but I'm not that sorry. The basic concepts I want you to take away are unit generators, instruments, which are unit generator graphs, and the orchestra and score paradigm, where we have a set of instruments that we then trigger to play with a score. So that's not so different than what we're used to. There are paradigms where there is no orchestra score division, that the writing of the instrument is at the same level as the writing of the score, and the instrument itself is such that it plays music without a score. But our approach in the beginning, for sure, will be more the instrument, the orchestra score paradigm. Okay, wow. So now I want to get you guys more involved in this online class a bit. I'm sorry we're not meeting in person. But we have this idea that in the 20th century, we achieved an electrical representation of sound. That means that we were able to record sound and play it back. So we have to imagine a time when that wasn't possible, that when you heard something, you never heard it repeated ever again in your existence. Right? You heard someone play a Mendelssohn piece, and you never heard that again. You might hear a replaying of that, but you never heard that performance again. Until we had an electrical representation of sound, in a sense, where we could play that back in exactly the same way. Now, is it exactly the same way? Can you really hear that performance twice? Is an interesting discussion. Can you cross the same river twice? No, you cannot. So I don't know if you can hear the same performance twice, but you can hear a recording of it now, and that's what I mean. So we had this sort of ability to record things and store them in an analog way. And then we have Max Matthews in the 50s using a computer to play back sound, and we have a digital representation of sound, a digital representation. So for those of you that might have an idea about that, what does it mean for music and audio that we have a digital representation of sound? What are some of the implications?
In what sense implications? That maybe that you can manipulate it later, or
Sure. I mean, you could manipulate tapes, right? So with electrical representation of sound, you can still manipulate it. So what does digital do in particular that we can focus on as being unique qualities of digital audio.
Degradation, maybe, or
Yeah, the repetition, right? Is that what you said?
no, a degradation of the
Degradation, yeah, right. So with a digital representation of sound, we can have it so that it does not degrade. So that copies of the signal never change. There is no limit to the number of copies you can make with the exact same result. So that idea of repetition becomes possible. So, and that's influenced. How has that influenced the music we listen to today?
Just kind of lets us like be able to transfer music easier, just like copy it easier, and be able to like I guess store music more easily without like it or store sounds and music easily without it like losing it through degradation.
That's right. So that links to what Faye is saying in the chat. He says samples in music, much more processed songs. I mean, yeah, in a sense. And in fact, I would say there's whole genres of music that were not possible without this, right? So if you think of drum and bass, um, or jungle, um, you take the Amen breakbeat, and that is chopped up incessantly over and over and over again for an entire genre of music, not just for a song, but an entire genre of music is focused just on that. And without a digital representation of sound, that is impossible, right? You couldn't just keep chopping it up because it's going to sound worse and worse. Obviously that's one thing. And you know, the ability to process sounds, as Faye is saying, changes too. And in fact, the way of working compositionally changes as well, because you can make mistakes and hit Control Z or Command Z, right? You can undo. Amazing. I mean, amazing how many times I've done undo, which was not possible before. There was no undo. There was only do. So there's that. I would say, can you come up with some other ideas about what digital has done maybe socially for music?
instant access to that music wherever you are.
Sure, we have a whole world of music available to us now, right? Without going to the record store even. So it used to be when you went to a recording studio, that it cost a lot of money. And in fact, analog synthesis at some point was just limited to a few universities. So who can make music now anywhere? You know, anybody with a computer can do it. So I would argue that the digital revolution, what it did for music, in a sense, was made it possible for us to work with less expense. If I want to make 400 sine oscillators, I can do that for free as long as I have a computer. I can do it right now in SuperCollider with just a few lines of code. To make 400 oscillators in 1970, I would have to buy 400 of them, and I would have gone broke because no one could afford that. Right. So there's also this democratization of music because of the tools we use are now commonplace. We use the same tools that we do to do word processing that we do to make music. What else about digital has changed the game? What else does it do that analog doesn't do as well? So I'll give you a hint here. So, oh, let's see. Faye says more things are considered as instruments. Oh yeah, I like that. That's pretty good too. Although I would say that was true at the analog side of things, but yeah, now I mean, I guess looking at Ju-Won Park, one of the things that might strike us is that chattering teeth are instruments, or even the computer itself as an instrument is a good idea. And in fact, with sensors, you can change the sound, the growth of plants in the music, so plants become instruments. I was thinking about if you were playing live music in 1972 with your analog synthesis instruments, and you had 5 of those instruments, how do you ensure that they're in tune? And how do you ensure that they're in time with each other? And the answer is that it was very difficult. And one of the things that made digital popular commercially was the notion that we could be much more precise, that we could use computers to make very precise changes. So if I want to change the instrument from being 440 hertz to 441.2, it's very easy with a computer. It's very difficult in the analog world. It's just not as precise. If I want to time things so that I play back a sample in millisecond intervals, slices of samples at millisecond intervals, very, very precisely. I can't do that with tape. It's too hard to cut precisely. With digital, obviously, we can just specify extremely precisely what we want. All right, so I would say that repetition, expense, precision, and finally abstraction, right? Are all things that digital has lent us. And why do I point this out? I point this out because when we go through class and start making the sounds and the music we want to make, we have to maybe make those considerations that this is what it's good for, right? These are the things that are possible that weren't possible before. And as you move forward, because now we are post-digital, digital is no longer a new revolution, right? It is a done thing. We're just living in the golden reflection of it. But as the next thing comes along, you should always think about what it offers you. What has changed? And what is it good for? And that's important. Okay. I would encourage you to look through the slides where many of these things are reflected upon. And also look at the checklist on Folio. And one of the assignments you have is to get, if you have a computer, to get SuperCollider running on your computer and to send me a screenshot of your either success or lack of success. So, you can take the picture with your phone if you don't know how to do a screenshot on your computer. That's one of the things you're supposed to do. Just to make you do it. But I will leave us all here with the 1961 piece programmed on the IBM 7094 synthesizer in the Music 4 programming language. So I will share the screen here. Share the whole thing. We will listen to this. Oh no, well, I guess we won't. All right.
the love of you. It won't be a stylish marriage. I can't afford a carriage, but you look sweet upon the seat of a bicycle built for two.
All right, so there it is. I hope to see you Thursday. I hope everybody's power stays on and that you don't get hit by a tree. Thank you for being here today. And don't forget to look at the folio and the checklist of things you're supposed to do. And I will see you guys on Thursday. Bye.